All right, picture this for a second. You just landed a job at literally one of the biggest, most prestigious companies on the planet. We're talking a record-breaking salary, massive expectations, the whole shebang. But almost right out of the gate, things just start going off the rails. Instead of crushing it, you're spending more time on sick leave or in recovery than you actually are doing the work you were hired to do. Your coworkers start whispering, they stop believing in you, and then, well, the ultimate corporate nightmare hits. Your team basically just moves on without you. The company bypasses you just to keep the lights on. It really begs a super fascinating question, right? When a highly hyped new hire just completely falls apart, what if talent isn't actually the problem? Are we looking at a massive personal failure here, or are we actually looking at a total failure of the environment? To give you an idea of just how bad this specific situation got, look at this quote. This wasn't some closed-door polite performance review. No, this was the boss, the president of the organization, publicly dismissing this person. Quote, "Find another place. We're done." Ouch. Imagine having that broadcast to the entire world. The absolute brutality of that statement is just staggering, especially when you think about the massive initial investment the company made. And let me tell you, the public reaction was just as ruthless. The internet, the media, the fans, they completely turned on this new hire. They branded them an absolute disaster. In fact, they were labeled quite literally the biggest mistake in company history. That is the kind of label that just ends careers, right? It destroys confidence and permanently ruins a reputation. Now, I know this sounds incredibly relatable to anyone who's ever seen a disastrous corporate hire implode. But spoiler alert, this is actually a story about the football star Ousmane Dembélé. Okay, let's dive into this. In this explainer, we're going to look at his journey as a profound case study on how systems interact with raw ability. Because honestly, it teaches us a massive lesson that we see playing out in corporate offices every single day. So before all the disaster struck, Dembélé's rise was, well, it was nothing short of meteoric. At just 18 years old, he absolutely explodes onto the senior scene at Rennes in France. He bangs in 12 goals and snags the Young Player of the Year award. And that instantly triggers a massive leap. By the time he's 19, he transfers to Germany to play for Borussia Dortmund for roughly 15 million euros. The trajectory we're looking at here is incredibly steep and incredibly fast. And when he gets to Dortmund, man, everything just clicks. 10 goals, a staggering 22 assists. He becomes a cup winner and takes home the Bundesliga Rookie of the Year award. You have to remember, he's only 19 years old here. He didn't just look like a good player, he looked like the undeniable, absolute future of football. The raw, world-class talent was just definitively there, no question about it. Which leads us to this unbelievably massive number. See, Barcelona had just suffered the absolute shock loss of their superstar Neymar for 222 million euros. They were in a total pressure cooker situation, desperate, and I mean desperate, for a replacement. So they bet the house on Dembélé. We're talking around 105 million euros up front plus bonuses. That was one of the biggest transfers in football history. So the expectations, they weren't just high, they were astronomical. He was brought in to literally fill the shoes of a legend. But once he gets to Barcelona, reality comes crashing down into this grim, repetitive cycle. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of our story. Step 1, by his third match, he suffers a hamstring tear. Step 2, that knocks him out for 4 long months. Step 3, he finally grinds through all that rehab and returns to the pitch. And step 4, he immediately gets injured again and again. It's kind of the physical equivalent of severe office burnout. The system he was dropped into, combined with these insane physical demands, trapped him in an inescapable loop of breaking down and recovering. Now, a really crucial point here is that this wasn't just, a bad few months. This was a bleak, defining 5-year period, from 2017 all the way to 2022. Multiple major injuries, 2 seriously heavy hamstring surgeries. His failing body literally became his entire identity. The fans completely lost their patience, and the media relentlessly mocked the guy. That generational, world-class talent we saw at Dortmund, it was just completely buried under hospital visits and rehab stints. Which brings us right back to that brutal quote from the beginning. Remember, it wasn't some anonymous internet troll posting this. It was the president of Barcelona. After years of this terrible injury loop, the organization's leadership essentially threw their hands up and publicly told their 105 million euro investment to pack his bags, find another club. The relationship was entirely fractured. They had officially deemed him a failure. Now, I want you to just pause for a second. Think about your own workplace. Think about that one colleague who's maybe been labeled as inconsistent or lazy or unreliable. We're always so quick to slap those labels onto the individual, right? But we rarely step back and ask the much harder question. Are they actually struggling because they lack the ability? Or are they just surviving the wrong environment? I mean, are they just trapped in their own version of the Barcelona injury loop? Well, Dembélé eventually moves on to Paris Saint-Germain, or PSG. And the philosophy shift here is literally night and day. Barcelona treated him like a machine. They forced him into every single match, demanding immediate output to justify that massive price tag. But PSG, they treated him like an asset. They didn't just chuck him on the field and hope for the best. They managed his workload incredibly carefully. They actually changed their system to fit the talent. Now, take a look at this number, 931. What's really interesting about it is what it actually represents. In one season at PSG, Dembélé played only around 931 league minutes. Honestly, for a star player, that is surprisingly low. But here's the kicker. It was incredibly strategic. PSG was deliberately preserving him. They actively chose not to waste this elite, fragile talent on low-value battles. They protected their assets so he could be fully explosive and ready for the moments that actually mattered. And wow, the results of that system reset are absolutely staggering. His confidence just came roaring back. We're talking 33 goals and 15 assists across 49 appearances. He helps drive the team to a league title, deep Champions League success, and he even gets recognized as Player of the Season. The crazy thing is, the talent didn't just magically appear out of thin air. It had always been there. It just desperately needed a system that allowed it to operate without breaking. It is truly a marvel to look at this transition. Seriously, think about it. The exact same player, possessing the exact same raw physical talent, goes from being labeled a public, historic failure at one organization to literally entering the Ballon d'Or conversation, which is the award for the best player in the entire world, at another. Same exact talent, completely different environment, drastically different outcome. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, the overarching lesson here boils down to a simple formula that we call the Dembélé theory. Performance equals talent multiplied by environment. And notice, it's a multiplication sign there, not addition. This is absolutely crucial because if your environment is a zero, if it's toxic, overly demanding, or just totally misaligned with your strengths, it literally does not matter how high your talent score is. The resulting performance is always going to be zero. And we see this exact math play out in corporate offices every single day. It's that seemingly average engineer who suddenly does exceptional, mind-blowing work the minute they get a new manager. It's the so-called difficult employee who transfers to a different department and immediately becomes a thriving team player. Or on the flip side, tragically, it's the brilliant high performer who completely burns out, not because they lacked ability, but because the system they were working in was fundamentally broken. Now, don't get me wrong, yes, talent absolutely matters. And yes, individual discipline is important. But before leadership slaps a bad hire label on someone, or before we just write off a colleague as wasted talent, we really have to look in the mirror and ask, did we actually build an environment where they could succeed? Or did we just drop them into a system that was practically designed to highlight their flaws and break them down? Because the overarching insight from Ousmane Dembélé's incredible journey is simply this. Potential rarely ever just disappears. It doesn't evaporate into thin air. More often than not, that raw talent simply goes dormant. It just sits there, waiting for the right system, the right management, and the right environment to unlock it once again. Environment is the ultimate key that turns potential into actual performance. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to take back to your own office, your own team, and maybe even your own management style. The next time you see someone really struggling, before you write them off completely, just ask yourself, were they truly failing or were they simply in the wrong system? Because sometimes the problem was never the person. It was the environment all along.